Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music with me, the 80s Mixtaper. I hope everyone's week has been good so far and we're all ready to dive into some more delicious 80s singles. For anyone new to the pod, in 2016 I made a bet with myself to try and use a streaming service and listen to every single UK charting single from the 31st of December 1979 to the 31st of December 1989. And I did this why, you may ask? Well, I think firstly as I love all forms of music, and secondly I was only a kid when the 80s started. In fact I was only 18 months old, and there was so much fantastic music and it was always in the background for such a colourful decade. And I suppose I wanted to explore what made it so great in the process. This podcast was born out of that journey, and each week I release a new playlist for both Spotify and Apple Music for you to listen to, which you'll find in the episode description. And we split that down into 2 episodes, the first part covering the first 7 songs and the final part covering the latter 6. We talk about each song, its origin, a little history if it's our first meeting with the band or singer, and dig into the interesting and sometimes funny and sometimes sad stuff. So where are we today? Well, we're coming out the back end of October 1981 and the first part of Playlist 31, and it's all killer, no filler. In this episode alone, we cover the polarising Marmite hit Oh Superman by Laurie Anderson. We have a brief dalliance with Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band, get badly sunburnt with the Factor 4 and Julio Iglesias, throw in some reggae with Trevor Walters, meet Haircut 100 with possibly the best song you'll hear on a stereo today, get more OMD, and then end the episode with The Police and a highly personal memory for me. So let's not beat around the bush any longer. Let's get back to the music. Let's set the scene. It's October 1981 and the post-punk landscape is fertile, and artists are pushing the boundaries of what a song can be. In this moment, in the midst of Reagan's America and Thatcher's Britain, comes a song that sounds like it belongs to the future, yet somehow speaks perfectly to its own time. Laurie Anderson's Oh Superman. You're used to the familiar structures of verse and chorus, perhaps the guitar riff or the urgent beat of a drum machine. But then, on the radio, something utterly different. A vocoded voice repeating ha 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 ha. It's hypnotic, uncanny, and not quite like music as you know it. This is Oh Superman, a song that for a brief moment turned the avant-garde into a chart phenomenon and was as polarising as the song's content. This is track 1, playlist 31. Settle into this one, it's 8 minutes long. If you're used to normal pop music, and this is the first time you've heard that song, I would imagine that's been quite a jarring experience for you. And you're probably thinking, what the hell is that? And slightly embarrassing confession time on my part. When I first attempted to listen to every single of the 80s back in 2016, I happened upon this song and immediately thought, Superman, oh, that must be the song where people do various actions like comb their hair and swim. But I thought that was by Black Lace. Oh well, I'll have a dance around the kitchen while doing the actions. And then this came on. I can't recall ever hearing this song up until that moment. A 38-year-old man in his kitchen getting it all wrong. And this is a song that's reached number 2 briefly in the UK charts. With apologies to Justin Lewis, who I interviewed, I digress. Laurie Anderson was born Laura Phillips Anderson on the 5th of June 1947 in Glen Ellyn, Illinois, USA. She grew up in a large family and developed an early interest in both music and the visual arts. By her teenage years, Anderson was already playing the violin, a skill that would remain central to her work. And she also cultivated a deep appreciation for literature and storytelling. Anderson attended Mills College in California briefly before transferring to Barnard College in New York City, where she graduated magna cum laude in art history in 1969. She went on to earn an MFA in sculpture from Columbia in 1972. During the 70s, Anderson became involved in the New York art scene, creating performance art pieces that blended music, technology and spoken word. She was influenced by minimalism, the Fluxus movement and conceptual art, collaborating with artists and musicians across disciplines. By 1981, she was known in avant-garde circles but had not yet broken into mainstream music. Oh Superman was originally conceived as part of Anderson's larger performance piece, United States Parts 1 to 4, a sprawling multimedia work examining American culture and politics. The song was recorded in a home studio on a limited budget and self-released in 1981 as a single on the independent label 110 Records. It's important to note that Oh Superman was not designed as a pop hit. Instead, it emerged from Anderson's experiments with voice modulation and tape loops, inspired in part by the 19th century aria Au Souverain from the opera Lycée. The song's use of a vocoder, minimalist repetition and cryptic lyrics was strikingly different from anything else on the radio. Despite, or perhaps because of its unconventional sound, Oh Superman caught the attention of influential BBC Radio 1 DJ John Peel. Laurie commented, "He gave it a chance for a lot of people to hear it, and I would never get that chance in the United States, ever. It was kind of a national anthem. It was also kind of weird, warped lullaby." The song was picked up by the British independent label Rough Trade, and to nearly everyone's astonishment, it climbed to number 2 on the UK singles chart in October 1981. This sudden success made Laurie Anderson, at least briefly, a household name in Britain. However, it's important to note that the number 2 high point was very dynamic. Within 5 weeks, this polarising song was out of the charts. Oh Superman is a song that defies easy explanation. Its lyrics are enigmatic, referencing modern communication, technology and war. Anderson has described it as a meditation on power and trust, inspired in part by the Iran hostage crisis and the sense of uncertainty pervading in the world at the time. The song's structure is almost hypnotic, 8.5 minutes of looping, minimalist textures. Anderson's processed voice speaks in the second person, as if addressing both a lover and a distant authority figure. The famous refrain, "Here come the planes, they're American planes, made in America, smoking and non-smoking," evokes both comfort and a subtle threat, reflecting anxieties about surveillance, technology, and the military-industrial complex. Critically, Oh Superman was hailed as a groundbreaking fusion of art and pop. The song's chart success was unprecedented for a piece of experimental performance art. For many listeners, it was an introduction to the possibilities of electronic music and vocal manipulation. For Anderson, it was both a breakthrough and a challenge. She had suddenly become the public face of avant-garde music, with all the expectations and pressures that entailed. Anderson would later reflect on how the song's success was both surprising and surreal, and she continued to explore themes of technology, communication, and identity throughout her career. Oh Superman remains her most iconic work, studied and cited for its innovative use of technology and its prescient commentary on the intersection of humanity and machines. It's a reminder that pop music can be strange, challenging and deeply thought-provoking, and that sometimes the most unlikely songs can speak more about our society than an entire back catalogue. Zoe Agriakis, writing for Varsity, summed it up. Oh Superman is a prayer to authority. It's a plea for comfort that goes unanswered. I recommend listening to this song at least 5 times, by which time you'll probably get it. Next up, this is one of the few times I owe everyone an apology. To explain, let's let our minds drift back to hallowed antiquity, or 1978 to be precise. Picture this. It's the late 1970s in America, the disco craze is at its peak, punk is shaking up the establishment and stadium rock is packing arenas from coast to coast. In this vibrant musical landscape, a distinctive voice rises above the noise, gravelly yet melodic, timeless yet urgent. That voice belongs to Bob Seger, and in 1978 he and his Silver Bullet Band released a song that captured both the allure and alienation of chasing dreams in Tinseltown. Hollywood Nights. Tonight, we're stepping into the world of Bob Seger for the first time on this podcast, the only time on this podcast. We'll dissect the story behind Hollywood Nights, explore the man who wrote it, and understand why this incredible song is a minor brain fart on my part. This is track 2. Now, I think it's well established that I make the occasional mistake on this podcast. I make the occasional research mistake, get a chart number wrong or get a month wrong, that sort of thing. But Let me set the scene with this particular one. I heard this song while making this playlist. Loved it immediately. Loved the almost meatloafish theatrical drama of it all. That feeling of driving at night in the Hollywood Hills in a convertible, your long hair blowing in the breeze, your linen cuffs flapping as you grip the steering wheel. I love listening to this song, and it's very important to note it was an entry into the UK charts in 1981. Bob Seger generally doesn't do a lot of business in the UK, amazingly. Even Night Moves didn't break the top 40, so I was pleased to see Hollywood Nights pop up, even if it only ever reached number 42 in October 1981. And as I'm playing it, I'm thinking, wow, this song's a great song. But it's a really surprising track for 1981. It feels much more 70s in its style and presentation. I wonder why that is. And of course, I then find out when writing this background that I'm listening to a live re-release, and the original came out in, drumroll please, 1978. So yes, for once on this pod, we're listening to an oldie, but screw it, I love the song, and Bob Seger is an interesting dude. I digress. So who is Bob Seger, and how did he arrive at the moment that birthed Hollywood Nights? Born Robert Clark Seger on the 6th of May 1945 in Detroit, Michigan, Seger grew up surrounded by music. His father, a musician himself, exposed Bob to a variety of musical styles from an early age. Seger began performing in bands during his teens, and by the early 1960s, he was recording and releasing singles with groups like the Decibels and the Town Criers. His first taste of significant regional success came with the song East Side Story in 1966, following by Ramblin' Gambling Man in 1968, which cracked the national charts. Despite these early wins, mainstream success eluded him through much of the 70s. Seger spent years touring relentlessly, building a devoted following in the Midwest. His breakthrough came in 1976 with the album Night Moves, which featured hits like the title track and Main Street. This album propelled him to national stardom, setting the stage for the release of Stranger in Town and Hollywood Nights in 1978. By the time Hollywood Nights was released, Seger had established himself as a quintessential American rock songwriter, known for his honest blue-collar lyricism and electrifying performances. His work chimed with listeners who saw themselves reflected in his stories of hope, heartbreak, and the pursuit of something greater. Hollywood Nights was released as part of Bob Seger's album Stranger in Town in May 1978. The song's genesis is rooted in Seger's own experiences in Los Angeles, a city where the promise of fame and fortune can be both intoxicating and isolating. According to Seger, the inspiration struck during a stay in LA. He was driving through the Hollywood Hills when the phrase Hollywood Nights, Hollywood Hills popped into his head. He found that it fit naturally with the rhythm he'd been working on, and the rest of the song developed from that spark. Seger has stated in interviews that the narrative about a Midwestern boy swept up by the excitement and excess of Hollywood was partly inspired by people he encountered in California, though not based on any single individual or true story. Musically, Hollywood Nights is a classic Seger track, energetic, driving and anthemic, with the Silver Bullet Band providing their signature robust backing. The song's lyrics evoke both the thrill and peril of Hollywood, capturing the duality of seeking fortune in a city built on dreams, but sometimes broken dreams. Upon its release, Hollywood Nights quickly climbed the charts, reaching number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US. Critics praised its dynamic arrangement and Seger's passionate delivery, cementing its place as one of his most enduring hits. And it's not easy writing a rock hit. Seger said it himself in a classic rock interview. Jimmy Iovine used to tell me, "The hardest thing to find is a rock and roll hit." I said, "Really?" He said, "Think about it. If an artist is looking for a hit, they put out a ballad. I've had hits with rockers and ballads. I think writing a rocker might be harder because it's so familiar for us." Hollywood Nights captures Bob Seger's ability to capture the spirit of an era, balancing the glitz of Hollywood against the grit of real life. The song's enduring popularity even now speaks to the universal allure of chasing dreams wherever they may lead. For listeners in 1978 and for new fans today, Hollywood Nights could speak even to the influencer generation. It's a snapshot of ambition, adventure, and the highs and lows of reaching for the stars. Next up, children of the 80s, especially children of the 80s, UK children indeed. Let me take you back to a very special place. I'm going to conjure up a picture and it's going to take a while because it's an important part of the 80s experience, and it's the lens we'll be looking through on our next song. It's 1980 something, and you are at Gatwick Airport for the first time, in your snazzy little lightweight jacket and shorts bought by your mum for your first ever holiday abroad, invariably to Spain or a Balearic island or a Canary island or a Greek island. One of thousands on offer from the metric ton of brochures your mum brought back from Lund Poly or Hayes Travel or Thomas Cook. It feels illicit and naughty. First of all, as you arrived at the airport parking at 4:30 in the morning, mission accomplished for your dad. The sun only just starting to come up in the still cool June air, birthing a new day. In the airport, all around you are similar families, older couples, grandfathers with trilbies and short check pattern shirts tucked into their slacks, and suitcases, massive suitcases. This was not a time of carry-on holdalls. The plane flight itself is a wonder, probably the initial horror of takeoff and eventually landing, giving way to the marvel of flight itself. The pretty stewardesses, the plain food that included a breakfast, a bread roll and a pudding. And of course, Dad steals your sachets of salt and pepper and sugar for practical reasons at the hotel. You arrive and are immediately assaulted by the heat, but you can see sunshine, only sunshine, and weather-baked buildings, white walls and glass-lined hotels. You find your rep with the clipboard held high, pile onto a bus, and then zigzag through this rocky, arid, alien landscape until the sea appears, and then more taller white and pink buildings, hotels on hotels, seemingly piled on top of each other, with cafes, restaurants and novelty shops dotted around, and the slow plod of the happy sunburnt shoulders of English tourists making their way out to lay on a beach towel with nothing more than a bottle of oil and little in the way of fear or understanding of skin cancer. On that holiday, as a child, you will try and spend every waking moment in the pool. You will marvel at the strange array of meats on offer for breakfast, identify that all hotel soups taste exactly the same, and recognise that Fanta Naranja is just orange Fanta. It will be a memory you will always cling to, especially as you gaze across a half-filled dance floor and spot a fellow 7-year-old who will also skid on their knees and ruin a good pair of freshly purchased trousers. And a deep, deep friendship is formed, well, at least one that will burn bright and burn out by the time of your return flight, as your new tan starts to peel, the after-sun fighting a losing battle. It is through this lens we must view our next track. If you've ever wondered how a Spanish crooner could take a classic Cole Porter tune and make it into an international sensation, you're in the right place. This is the story of Begin the Beguine, a story of Julio Iglesias, the man who brought it back to life for a new generation. This is track 3, playlist 31. If you're new to Julio Iglesias, let's rewind. Born on the 23rd of September 1943 in Madrid, Spain, Julio José Iglesias de la Cueva grew up the son of a prominent doctor. He attended the prestigious Colegio de la Pilar in Madrid and later studied law at Complutense University of Madrid. But his early ambitions weren't in music, they were actually on the football pitch. As a young man, Julio was a goalkeeper for Real Madrid Castilla, a reserve team of Real Madrid. He was, by all accounts, talented, with a promising future in professional football. However, fate had other plans. In 1963, Iglesias was involved in a serious car accident that left him with spinal injuries and partially paralysed for over a year. His recovery was long and arduous, and the accident ended his football career. During his rehabilitation, Julio began to play guitar as a form of therapy. It was here that he discovered a new passion, songwriting and singing. By 1968, he entered and won the Benidorm International Song Festival with his composition La Vida Sigue Igual, which led to a contract with Columbia Records. Julio's debut album of the same name was released that same year. Through the 1970s, Iglesias became one of the most successful Spanish-language artists in the world. He released such hits as Gwendolyn, which represented Spain in the Eurovision Song Contest in 1970, and Un Canto a Galicia, which topped charts across Europe and Latin America. By the early 80s, Julio Iglesias had sold millions of records in Spanish, French, Italian, German and Portuguese, establishing himself as a truly international star. However, UK success had eluded him. Begin the Beguine was originally written by Cole Porter in 1935 for the musical show Jubilee. The song became a jazz standard, perhaps most famously recorded by Artie Shaw in 1938. But why did Julio Iglesias, a Spanish balladeer, choose this classic? In a Guardian interview, Iglesias explained his intent and transformation with new lyrics. I think the song was originally about a dance, but I wrote about a lost love, someone you want to go back to. Everything in life is about personal experiences, your feeling, your brain and your chromosomes. So, as an artist, you express that. I'm Spanish, but these things are universal. Of course, being the suave, dapper Spaniard that he also had an eye for the ladies and added, "The song was a hit with women. I adore, learn from and respect women. I like to flirt, what can I say?" It went to number 1 in the UK and changed my life completely. It felt like a miracle. Covering a well-known American standard was a strategic move. Iglesias recorded Begin the Beguine as part of his album De Niña a Mujer in 1981, but the English language version was released as a single and featured on the compilation album Begin the Beguine, The Greatest Hits. Upon its release in October 1981, the single became a runaway hit. In the United Kingdom, it soared to number 1 on the UK singles chart, making Iglesias the first Spanish artist to achieve this feat. The single spent 1 week at the top and remained on the chart for 18 weeks, cementing Julio's place in British pop history. The song's success opened doors to further English language releases, including Hey and To All the Girls I've Loved Before with Willie Nelson, which would follow later in the decade. With its lush orchestration and Iglesias' velvety vocals, evoking moonlit dances and tropical nights, the song captured the British imagination at a time when affordable package holidays to Spain and the Balearic Islands were booming. It symbolised a yearning for exotic yet accessible adventure. Sun-drenched beaches, cheap sangria, and a touch of continental flair that drew millions of working-class Brits southward in the 1970s and 80s. The British love affair with Spanish holidays exploded in this era, fuelled by the rise of charter flights and tour operators like Lund Polly and Thomas Cook. What began as a novelty in the late 1960s became a mass phenomenon. By the 1970s, destinations like Mallorca, Ibiza and the Costa Blanca were flooded with pale-skinned tourists seeking respite from the rainy UK summers. Package deals offered all-inclusive simplicity, flights, hotels and sometimes meals for 2 weeks in Mallorca in the 1980s. Resorts like Magaluf and Benidorm transformed into British enclaves, with high-rise hotels often half-built upon arrival, promising pools and proximity to the sea. This attachment wasn't just about sun, it represented social mobility, a first taste of abroad for many families who'd previously stuck to Blackpool or Scarborough. Through Iglesias' lens, these trips were a Beguine-like dance, rhythmic, seductive, and a brief escape from everyday drudgery. Amid this influx, oddly British cafes and pubs sprang up like transplanted relics from home, catering to tourists wary of unfamiliar paella or tapas. In places like Magaluf, English-owned bars served full English breakfast, fish and chips and pints of bitter, often under names like Cheers Bar, Thames Bar or the Village Pub. Chains like Wimpy even set up outposts by the mid-1980s, alongside knock-off establishments mimicking UK high street favourites. These spots provided comfort in the chaos, familiar greasy spoons amid the siestas, reflecting a colonial-like adaptation where Brits recreated Blighty under the Mediterranean sun. Iglesias' song, with its blend of American jazz and Spanish passion, mirrored this cultural mashup. Exotic on the surface, but reassuringly accessible. A hallmark of the era's naivety was the belief that Factor 8 sunscreen offered ample protection against the fierce Spanish rays. Sunscreen technology was rudimentary, SPF ratings only standardised in the 1960s, with common products in the 70s offering SPFs of 2 to 8, far below today's standards. British health campaigns warned of sun dangers, but many tourists slathered on low-factor lotions, thinking it sufficient for all-day baking on the beach. This led to epidemics of lobster red burns, a rite of passage that embodied the era's carefree or careless attitude. In the beginning of holiday romance, the sun was a seductive partner, its risks downplayed in favour of that golden tan. Television further amplified and satirised this attachment to Spanish getaways, particularly through comedies like Duty Free, which ran from 1984 to 1986, which portrayed the quintessential Brit abroad antics with a mix of humour and pathos. The ITV sitcom followed two mismatched couples, the working-class Pearces and the middle-class Cochrans, at a Marbella hotel, delving into extramarital flirtations, cultural faux pas, and the everyday absurdities of package holidays, like botched excursions and hotel mishaps. Starring Keith Barron and Gwen Taylor, it neatly captured the era's stereotypes, the excitement of duty-free shopping, the awkwardness of language barriers, and the underlying class tensions bubbling under the sun. Shows like this reinforced the image of Brits seeking romance and respite in Spain, turning the holiday into a comedic mirror for viewers back home. Much like how Begin the Beguine romanticised the escape, but with added slapstick and sangria-fueled drama. The overall vibe of going abroad in the 1980s was one of wide-eyed excitement mixed with mild culture shock. No smartphones for navigation, just dog-eared guidebooks and hotel reps in loud uniforms. Flights felt glamorous, even if delayed. Evenings involved flamenco shows or discos blasting hits like Iglesias, followed by walks along promenades lined with souvenir shops selling straw donkeys. For many, it was about affordable indulgence, better tasting Coke, duty-free cigarettes and the thrill of haggling in markets. Yet stereotypes emerged. Loud Brits in Union Jack shorts, seeking Watney's Red Barrel amid the locals' bemusement, cementing the Brits abroad image by decade's end. Through Begin the Beguine, it all swirled into a nostalgic haze, a dance of discovery where Spain offered not just holidays, but a beguiling step into the wider world. Next up, a lovers' rock counterpoint to the riots flaring in Brixton and Toxteth. On the airways, we find a wave of homegrown black British music pushing back against the synth-pop tide with soulful romantic urgency. We've mentioned lovers' rock before, that sweet strain of reggae born in London's sound systems and small studios, where Jamaican roots met British streets and turned heartache into harmony. It's Motown by way of Brixton, all falsetto pleas and shimmering guitars, and no song captures its crossover spark quite like the next one we're about to hear. This is the debut chart entry for a voice that could melt vinyl. Trevor Walters and Love Me Tonight. This is track 4, press play now. Trevor Walters, a name you might not know, but a voice you definitely should. And the song Love Me Tonight, his debut chart entry, and a lovers' rock classic that could melt even the hardest of hearts. Unlike some of his contemporaries, there isn't a sprawling Wikipedia entry or a string of tell-all interviews that map out his every move. What we do have are the essentials. Trevor Walters is a singer who emerged from London's vibrant lovers rock scene in the late 70s and early 80s. He became known for his soulful vocals and heartfelt delivery, quickly making a name for himself amongst reggae fans and chart watchers alike. Walters' breakthrough came in 1981 with Love Me Tonight, released on the INS label. The song is pure lovers rock, romantic, bittersweet and irresistibly catchy. It's the kind of track that takes you straight to a smoky club in Brixton or Hackney, all slow dancing couples and neon lights, where the troubles of the outside world melt away for a few precious minutes. Walter's performance is all yearning and vulnerability, his voice gliding effortlessly over the rhythm, turning a simple love song into something universal. As for the story behind the song, Love Me Tonight was written and produced in the tradition of lovers rock, with a focus on lush arrangements and smooth melodies rather than political commentary or dancehall bravado. The track connected with British audiences, especially black British youth, who saw their own stories reflected in its lyrics and sound. It became a hit on reggae charts and found crossover success, helping to cement Walters' reputation as one of the genre's standout voices. Reviewers loved the song. James Hamilton on the record Mirror said, absolutely gorgeous, dynamite, jazzily lifting atmosphere filled 93 to 95 BPM 12-inch lovers rock slowy with scatting gentle background voices behind sweetly wailing soulful Trevor while guitar doodles through the relaxed rhythm. This is world-class music on a par with Stevie Wonder, George Benson and all the superstars. Find it, hear it, love it. Beyond these facts, details about Trevor Walters' early life and musical influences remain scarce in public records. There is no widely available information about his upbringing, musical training or personal journey leading up to the release of Love Me Tonight. What we do know is that he was part of a generation of black British artists who, in the face of social and political upheaval, created a sound that was both distinctly British and deeply rooted in Caribbean tradition. The impact of Love Me Tonight can't be overstated. It's a song that speaks to the heart of lovers rock, a genre that offered solace, celebration and a sense of belonging to those who often felt on the margins of mainstream British culture. Walters' rendition remains a staple on lovers rock playlists, its romantic spirit undimmed by the passing of decades. Alright, think we haven't had enough joy and funk in this episode? Then think again. Let's slip this podcast into top gear. Let's talk about a song that captures the giddy burst of the early 80s British pop-funk optimism. God, I love this next song. Make sure you have good headphones for this Gretsch-backed car chase of epic proportions. It's October 1981, the Falklands crisis is looming, but in the clubs and on the airways, there's this infectious escape hatch of sound. Haircut 100, a fresh-faced six-piece from Beckenham, Kent, dropped their debut single on Arista Records, and it slices right into the UK top 10. The track is Favourite Shirts, Boy Meets Girl, written and fronted by 20-year-old Nick Haywood, whose boyish yelp and jangly guitar riff turn a bunch of verses into a platinum-selling sparkler. This is the band's calling card, the one that sets up their whirlwind year ahead, blending Talking Heads' quirk with Level 42's groove, all wrapped up in a preppy sweater of pure unpretentious fun. If you're new to Haircut 100, and this is our entry point into their brief, blazing story, picture a gang of art school adjacent mates who turn pub-tested weirdness into chart gold. This is track 5. Like I say, this one is a killer on good stereos. Haircut 100 came together in 1980, born from the late 70s London scene where punk's raw edges were softening to something jazzier and more colourful. Nick Haywood and bassist Les Neames had been knocking around in bands since 1977, starting with one called Rugby, chasing the post-punk funk vibe in Croydon and Beckenham dives. Haywood, born May the 20th, 1961 in Beckenham, was the spark. A self-taught songwriter with a commercial art background, scribbling lyrics like pop art collages, influenced by David Byrne's cryptic wordplay and the escapist buzz of films like That'll Be the Day. By the early 1980, they'd roped in guitarist Graham Jones, and the core trio hashed out their name over coffee at the Ski Club of Great Britain. Haywood's parents ran the bar there, with a flat downstairs for late-night jams. Haircut 100 popped out stream of consciousness style. They tested it at the local 3 Tons pub in Beckenham, got a baffled why from mates, and that puzzled reaction sealed it. As Haywood later put it, it felt just right, like a question mark begging an answer in every chorus. The lineup solidified fast into a 6-piece powerhouse. Drummer Rob Stroud and keyboardist Tim Smith were early in, but by mid-1980 they levelled up. Phil Smith on saxophone for that punchy horn blast, Marcus Fox on percussion to layer the swing, and crucially, Blair Cunningham on drums. Cunningham, fresh from Memphis and gigging in the UK, was a revelation. Haywood called him the best drummer in the universe at the time, outshining anyone on the circuit with his Loctite funk pocket. Managed by Carl Adams, they gigged relentlessly in sweaty spots like Hicks's and Cinderella's, sharing bills with funk acts like Shack Attack and Eye Level. Early press dubbed them Britain's answer to Talking Heads, which thrilled Hayward. He'd grown up mapping London's punk nooks from King's Road squats to Bowie's old haunts at Ravensbourne Art College. But it was the songs that hooked. Hayward's love ditties, penned from his own wide-eyed perspective, mixing soul hooks with surreal snapshots. They signed to Arista on the strength of demos, and by fall 1981, the pieces aligned for their big swing. Let's talk about the song itself, that three-piece horn section kicking in like a sugar rush, Hayward's half-rap staccato delivery, tumbling over Cunningham's crisp beat. It's the sound of youth on the cusp, all elbows and grins. So what's the story here? Favourite Shirts wasn't some calculated banger. It was Hayward metaphorically throwing darts at a lyric sheet one boozy night in a cheap Kensington flat he shared with Neems and Jones. As he told Trouser Press, the words came spasmodic. Feel the rhyme, take the time, go fighting to the top. Quick flashes of that 20-year-old haze, no real plot, just conviction. Things like that are quick flashes of youth that don't bear any relation, he said. But suddenly, you get boy meets girl and that explains the whole song. The chorus snaps it into focus, a meet-cute montage, all crushes and chaos. That goofy rap bit, go number one, stick a honey bun, your mind begins to flop. Pure nonsense, but laced with a gem from an Argentinian pal named Trisha, crashing at the flat and teaching Hayward Spanish. Hey camisa, he yells, hey shirt. Slipped in as an inside joke, tying back to the title's lone lyrical anchor, your favourite shirt is on the bed. Funny thing, favourite shirts plural never hits the lyrics. It's singular, a cheeky misdirect on the sleeve like the band's name itself. Recorded at the Roundhouse in Camden with producer Bob Sargent, it captured that raw energy. No overthinking, just the six of them, plus guest horns piling on the joy. Hayward knew he had a keeper, but the real test was the clubs. He pressed up a 12-inch and slipped it to Steve Strange at the Blitz. The dance floor emptied at first, then exploded as it spun, bodies piling on, no one bailing. Wow, this is actually something, Hayward thought, the penny dropping. Out October the 24th, 1981, it rocketed to number 4 on the UK singles chart by November, earning silver certification from the BPI for over 250,000 sales. The video, a goofy romp in an empty bowling alley, barely dented MTV stateside, and it stalled at number 101, but back home, it was rocket fuel. British press raved, refreshing, different, a palate cleanser after the 70s gloom. Smash hits splashed them as pin-ups, their preppy outfits becoming accidental icons. Not chased, just worn, as press agent Judy Totten nudged them into the mags alongside Depeche Mode kin. This single paved the way for Pelican West, their number 2 debut album dropping February 1982. 10 tracks of that same buoyant weirdness, from Love Plus One, which we'll definitely hear on this podcast, to Lemon Fire Brigade. But for Haircut 100, favourite shirts was their portal, from Beckenham pub quizzes to transatlantic tours, all under 6 months. Hayward's flashes of youth, they lit up a decade's dawn. For track 6, a complex single from the early 80s synth landscape, where OMD were busy turning cold circuits into something profoundly human. Last time, we lingered in the misty glow of Souvenir, that first single from their third album, Architecture and Morality, which dropped in July 1981 and climbed to number 3 on the UK charts. It was a quiet revolution, OMD, these two lads from the Wirral, with a crate of synthesizers, proving that electronic pop could whisper secrets instead of shouting them. But Architecture and Morality wasn't done reshaping the blueprint of the genre just yet. Released in full on October the 8th, 1981 via Virgin's Din Disc imprint, the album fused stark machine-like rhythms with orchestral swells and themes drawn from history's forgotten corners. Think cathedrals built from bass lines. And if Souvenir was the elegant overture, the second single, released just 8 days later on October the 16th, arrives like a solemn procession. Joan of Arc, clocking in at 5 minutes and 49 on the LP, it's a slow burn elegy narrating the fall of France's teenage warrior saint with a melody that feels both medieval and futuristic. It's OMD at their most ambitious, no disco hooks here, just a hymn to doomed conviction. Peaking at number 5 in the UK, number 13 in Ireland and number 32 in Canada, earning a silver certification from the BPI for over 250,000 units shipped. Press play now. If that didn't leave you contemplating bonfires and broken halos, well, pour yourself a stiffer drink, because the story of Joan of Arc is as much about creative torment as it is about 15th century martyrs. Penned entirely by McCluskey, the track was composed about Joan of Arc's execution by burning at the stake in Rouen, ordered by an English-backed tribunal on charges of heresy. He'd been mulling the historical figure for months, inspired partly by a 1980 French tour, where fans dubbed their jaunts the Joan of Arc tour for all the cathedrals and chateaux they hit. But this wasn't some rote history lesson. McCluskey had first sketched a waltz-like demo called Maid of Orleans, a lilting tribute that evoked Joan's rural roots. Unhappy with its folksy drift, he worried it veered too close to Paul McCartney's bagpipe schlock of Mull of Kintyre. He shelved it and pivoted to this starker incarnation. Maid of Orleans would resurface later that year as the album's third single, retitled Maid of Orleans, The Waltz Joan of Arc, hitting number 4 in the UK and topping charts in Germany, Belgium and Spain, but Joan of Arc was the one that stuck first. Recorded at the Manor Studio in Oxfordshire with producer Richard Mannering, the song's genesis was pure OMD alchemy. McCluskey started abstractly, layering 5 minutes of himself droning the note A with heavy echo. He sprinkled in glockenspiel notes in A major, adding a click track, and only then sketched bass, chords, vocals and drums over the bed. That's how Joan of Arc was created, he later explained. Joan of Arc would not have the same texture or atmosphere if I had not started with those completely abstract elements. The result, a track that wrestles with faith's fragility. If Joan of Arc had a heart, would she give it as a gift? It's McCluskey's third-person dodge around the L word, a personal bugbear for the band. We really didn't want to do this sort of traditional love lyrics, Humphrey said. We always hated those kinds of I love you, you love me kinds of songs. Influenced by Kraftwerk's robotic odes and Brian Eno's oblique narratives, OMD chased the esoteric, warplanes in Enola Gay, now Saints in Flames. McCluskey agonised over slipping love into the chorus. I tortured myself, but love here is kind of third party. It's not you or me, it's she. She fell in love, so I can get away with it. Architecture and Morality sold over 4 million copies worldwide, cementing OMD as synth-pop architects. But Joan of Arc endures as their most poignant moment, humanity flickering against the machine. Next up, as we reach our halfway point for playlist 31, a tune which is incredibly special to me. While we have met Shakin' Stevens and Adamant, two people who are some of the earliest pop stars I remember, this next song was the first song I tangibly remember liking. Like, as a 3-year-old boy, actually acknowledging a pop song as existing and loving it. So in a way, it's the reason I love music, and it's really a big part of why this pod exists. We last caught up with the Police on Invisible Sun, that brooding opener from their 1981 album Ghost in the Machine. The track dropped as the lead single in the UK in September 1981, just weeks before the album's release, tackling the heavy shadows of Northern Ireland's troubles with its haunting synths and Sting's plea for hope amid despair. It hit number 2 on the UK charts, but stirred controversy with the BBC refusing to air its video. Well, if Invisible Sun plunged us into the band's darker, more politically charged side, their follow-up single flipped the script entirely. We're talking about a buoyant, piano-driven earworm that captured unrequited love with infectious energy. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic by the Police. This is track 7, playlist 31, our final track today. Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic dates back to Sting's pre-Police days. He wrote the song in autumn 1976, recording a solo demo at bassist Mike Howlett's house in Acton, London, using an acoustic guitar, bass guitar, an African drum, a TAC 4-track recorder, and cheap microphones. That raw version later appeared on the 1997 archival release Strontium 90, Police Academy, a collection from the short-lived band that preceded the Police. In early 1981, Sting revisited it, working up a new demo with session keyboardist Jean Roussel at a studio near Montreal. Roussel added layers of piano, Minimoog synthesizer and clavinet. At the time, Sting considered it for a solo project. He brought it to Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland during Ghost in the Machine sessions, which ran from January to September 1981 at Le Studio in Quebec and Air Studios in Montserrat, co-produced by the band and Hugh Padgham. Padgham isolated the band members in separate rooms, Summers in the main studio, Sting in the control room, Copeland in the dining area, to create a live feel while also minimising tensions. The album marked a shift to synths and horns, diluting their raw trio sound amid growing band friction. The band struggled with the track. They tried re-recording it in various styles, slower, punk, reggae, bossa nova, to fit their sound, but nothing matched the demo's energy. As Copeland recorded in the liner notes from the 1993 box set, Message in a Box, "We spent more time on this song than all of the other songs put together. One morning, in a state of extreme grumpiness, I remember saying, okay, put up Sting's original demo and I'll show you how crummy it is. So Sting stood over me and waved me through all the changes. I did just one take and that became the record." They overdubbed drums and guitar onto the demo, retaining Roussell's keyboards despite Summers' reservations about the incredibly pushy player and the crowded mix. Musically, it's new wave proto-yuppie with reggae elements. Written in standard 4/4 time, it builds tension between D major and D minor keys, with a rising Lydian scale bass line and ambiguous sections resolving to D major. Sting's bass emphasises beats 4 and 1 in the chorus for a reggae pulse. Copeland adds flourishes on drums, and Caribbean steel drums chime in during the chorus. The lyrics depict unrequited love, with the narrator too nervous to confess, vowing to call 1,000 times a day. In the chorus, Sting rhymed magic with tragic for a lack of alternatives. Copeland later quipped, "I remember Sting for years trying to think of a rhyme for magic. The only word he could come up with apart from tragic was pelagic, which means ocean going." Released in October 1981 by A&M Records as the second UK single from Ghost in the Machine, it topped charts in the UK, Canada, Ireland and the Netherlands, peaked at number 3 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and was certified platinum in the UK and 2 times platinum in New Zealand. Critics praised it. AllMusic's Chris True called it pop brilliance, while Ultimate Classic Rock described it as heart-pounding love song for the ages. Sting re-recorded it with an orchestra for his 2010 album Symphonicities. This track propelled Ghost in the Machine to massive success, blending the Police's edge with pop's accessibility. For me, it's the start of a lifelong love, which I've always found magic, even in the darkest of times. So we're now halfway through playlist 31, but do join us next week for the back 6, where we introduce ABC, completing the Sheffield synth pop picture. We get Rush's big 80s moment, one which will be played again and again in various Goldberg's episodes. We introduce Brit rockers Saxon to the picture, and we hear more from Kool and the Gang and Japan. Until next time, have a wonderful week. Take care.